You sent me some amazing pictures. We've got the beautiful cover photo of your book. And then this was the next one that you sent to me. I'd love to hear, I can't wait to hear all about your beautiful photos.
Yes, this photo was actually taken in 2010, and we were in Puglia, but we were in Castro di Marina, which is a little bit north of Otranto. And this is where I talk about it in the book, where I first say to Ray, I'm going to write a book. I think it's going to be a mystery. So you can see where all this leads back to. So we were in this magnificent house, the little villa, stone house, and it was built on a pile of stones, and we're up over this beautiful water, the Adriatic. And if you could see a tiny lone tree, a single tree jutting out into the water. And I had put my single glass of wine. I wasn't posing or posturing anything. I just took that picture. And that picture has followed me everywhere as a reminder that I was going to write a book, and it was going to be a mystery. So 2010, so it was 10 years later, is that right? 2020, when my book came out. And I didn't go to take the solo trip until 2012, so 8 years after that trip. But this glass of wine, not this glass of wine, but that lone tree is going to figure prominently in the first book in the series. It's almost a character.
Oh, that is fantastic. I love that. I love how all of these photos are kind of tying in to your whole journey, like how everything connects even to your next books. I think that's such a beautiful, cool thing.
It's magical. I just keep telling everybody it's magical, and I believe in magic. So it's crazy at this stage of my life. It's amazing, it's crazy, but mostly it's magical. And I buy into that.
And I love that. And it really is magical. Let's see.
Yeah, the maps.
The maps you were talking about, here they are.
Yeah. And this is what's so important. I did the big map first because I wanted you to see, you have to go all the way down to the heel. And if you look at Italy, it's actually a boot, and that's what everybody calls it. There's the toe of the boot that's almost touching Sicily, and then there's the heel of the boot, which is where I was, in that tiny heel. And I wanted you to see it because right across the strait there is Albania. And I write about the sun rising and those mountains rising out of the water, and I was able to see Albania twice while I was there. And then again, magical. It was just magical. But again, it positions you to see where I was, in a very, very obscure place in Italy.
And it is such a large place. So that is very helpful to see pinpointed more of a direction where.
Yeah, it is. But you can also see that the northern region is the big sort of the mushroom puff up there, is landlocked. They have beautiful lakes up there, but then you come to this long cylinder. I don't know what you call that part of the boot. I'm sure it has its name, but the high boot. I always like to think of it as a riding boot, with the water on both sides. So it has extensive coastline, which is just beautiful.
That's fantastic. Have you been to more places than you wrote about, like where you're talking about?
I have probably not many places. I've been to the island of Sardinia. We spend a lot of time in Sicily, which we really love Sicily too. It's so bountiful with the food, and it's so colorful with the history. Yes, we've been all over. We've been to the lake regions. I'm also going to write a historical fiction about an area called Trieste up in the north. And Tuscany is the first place everybody goes. And if somebody hasn't been to Italy, we go, oh yeah, go ahead and go to Tuscany. They almost speak all English in Tuscany now because it's overrun with tourists. So and we've seen not all of the tourist attractions, but we've seen the main tourist attractions in Venice and Rome and Florence and all the named places that people go. So now we only go to obscure places, and we've been doing that since probably 2002, maybe 2000. We started saying we want out of the maddening crowds.
Yeah. That
So,
actually is reminding me of a question I was going to ask you later. There's a mention in your memoir about how there are places where you went that don't really have any funding because they're not where the tourists go. Do you think that when people read your book, they might start adding to their bucket list these other places so that they can have the funding to be maintained more?
I hope so. And there is an example of it. And I think I sent you the photograph of the big red cross that was the paint was peeling off and the concrete was buckled up with the weeds growing out. That has been totally cleaned up. I don't think it had anything to do with my book. I think it had to do with the sainthood of the martyrs. And when they learned that was going to happen, Pope Francis was going to do that. That place got cleaned up really quick. So it's a totally different place. I was like, what place is this? I mean, the cross is painted. There's a huge statue of Pope John Paul there now. There's flowers there. There's a little garden. So, you know what? I'm happy. I'm glad, because now when people come, they don't go, what is this place? They say, this is a place that honors the memory of a magnificent story. And again, the storytelling.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see that in your book, to even think of that side of it. I never would have thought about funding not going to a place where they're not getting a lot of tourism, because they do have the areas that are so populated with tourism. I think
Yes.
that's really important to know and think about. And I mean, the areas sound gorgeous for going to visit. So it's really great that you pointed that out. And I really appreciated learning that.
Oh, thank you. So here we come, and now you can see where Otranto is. I hope I don't know. Can you point on your screen to them?
There we go.
Yeah, there.
I was getting my bearings.
Yes, yeah, you got it. That's great. Yeah. So you can see it. Now it's on a little protrusion it butts right out into the water. That Otranto is the furthest east. It's the land furthest east in Italy. The sun rises there first. It touches that land right there first. And again, something I never thought of. Where does the sun touch the coast first here on our East Coast? So it really made me think about different things. But you'll notice it's also the last little town before you reach right to the bottom of the heel of the boot, which is Leuca, Santa Maria Leuca, which is a beautiful little sleepy fishing village, which again, a lot of these villages are going to show up in my mystery series, because they are so lovely and should be on people's itinerary. But again, I do understand, if you have one time to go to Italy, what are you going to do? What are you going to see? You need to see the David. It's magnificent. You need to see Rome, the Colosseum. But there are places, there's another theater that was built before the Colosseum that's older, and Ray and I have explored the whole thing, touching it, because the tourists don't go there. It's kind of weedy and you have to kind of tromp around. But it's people want to see those. So I don't say don't go. You need to see what your heart desires and what will feed your spirit. Now for Ray and I at this age in our life, what feeds our spirit is joy, peacefulness, calmness, fabulous seafood, good wine, and each other's company. So, and our Italian friends, because of course we have many Italian friends now, and they are so hospitable. They have welcomed us with open arms and open hearts, and it's been a glorious time. So, but I do recommend this little area, because also there is Bari, there's Brindisi, and there's Lecce. Lecce is a beautiful Baroque city, very small, but very beautiful. And I write about that because that was the train trip we were going to Lecce.
Yes. I just flashed to that part of the book that you wrote about when the second you said it. That one made an impression on me. I was just so worried for you the whole time.
No, that we would never get home, ever. I was sure I was never going to see the light of day again after that trip. But again, if I hadn't had that experience, what would I have written about? Oh, everything's calm today, everything's peaceful. I had lunch.
It's a good point. Even in a memoir, you have to have that conflict that you're writing about that you overcame and lived through.
Yes, you do. And I think the greatest joy, and again, this is with the translation of the book, a classroom of students translated the chapter, The Last Train to Otranto.
Oh.
And it's the Egidio La Noche. And I was able to go there and speak to them and to thank them in person for their role in getting the book translated. So there are wonderful stories like that, which is very unique to my translation, not to anybody else's, because everybody says, whoa, no, you only need one person. They need to understand English totally. They need to get inside your spirit. That didn't happen in my book. But all these fabulous people contributed and helped translate it. And they did it with such joy and love. I'm sure the book's better.
Oh, it goes right back to what you were saying. That's like magic. You don't see it go in that direction ever. And it's just such a beautiful thing and special thing that is how it came to be. I love that.
Now, this is on a November day, a stormy day, but I wanted, this is the last picture I took before my camera broke, if you remember that.
Oh, yes.
But it's magnificent. And again, this is a little teeny tiny place. The wall city itself is 500 to 600 people. And it's the city sprawls out from there with about 5,000 people. And it's a post-World War II city. And if a person is on the move and they want to visit 100 towns in a day, which some people do, and they stop, they won't see this wall city. You have to go in through that post-World War city to see this magnificent place. But this promenade wraps in a big U around the Adriatic. And I spent so much time walking there, snugging in those little corners. They had little niches along the wall that I could snug into, and nobody paid any attention to me. But look at this. There's no one there. No one. And it's what I loved the most, is there was no one there. When I went back to do my book tour, there were a lot of people there. It was August, late August, and it was packed with people, which was such a shock.
That's true. Like the different timings when you were there probably makes a huge difference.
It's this city, along with many of these coastal cities, are the vacation spots for Italians. Northern Italians. These are their favorite places. So most of the vacationers were Italians. There certainly were some Americans, some Canadians, some Germans, and Orientals, but mostly they were Italian, because August is the big vacation month in Europe.
Oh, neat. Okay, so it kind of aligns out here with like summer vacations or something.
Yeah, and I always warn people of that. I said, and it's hard when you've got children and you want them to experience these wonderful situations. You travel in the summer, and it's the worst time that's possible to see these things, because everybody else is there viewing them.
Yeah, that's good advice though. Like if they can do some kind of cool field trippy time during the year, maybe instead.
And I think you could get permission from the school. I mean, I would be a person that would fight for that, because experience to me weighs over sitting in a classroom often. And to say for 2 weeks, we want to take our child or children, and whether it's Costa Rica or wherever, or to visit Mount Rushmore, whatever it is, that you ought to be allowed time off to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, that is part of the learning experience, I think, because they're taking in so much history and just experience.
It's living history. And we do a living library here. I don't know if y'all do that where you are, but
I'm not sure. What do you mean by that?
Well, we actually have real people come and be the book, and the book is their history, their experience. So
Oh,
it's been a wonderful program, and it's in conjunction with their library and the Pat Connery Literary Center that we do this. And so, like, one of my friends was a former FBI undercover agent. She becomes a living book, and people gather around and she talks and they ask questions. And so they get this firsthand knowledge. It's really a great program.
that sounds like an amazing experience. I've never heard of that before. I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
I would
it
love to
is.
see that.
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Well, come on down.
Come on down. I love it.
And this is Otranto on a sunny day. I wanted you to see the contrast, but you are looking across from the old city into the post World War II city. But again, I think it's important for places, really important for me. And one of the things about the Adriatic is it's very Greek. The Greeks settled this area. And again, I write about that in the book, about the 9 Greek cities that almost killed me. But so and you have the tropical sun in or the Mediterranean sun. I think there's a difference between Mediterranean and tropical. So, but you have a heat that's more intense. So the houses are squared. They don't have as many windows, and they're white. They're dazzling white. So it hurts your eyes on a clear day. You're like have to have multi-thick sunglasses on. Uh, but it's also spectacular. There's a little town called Ostuni that's on the top of a hill, and if it's a sunny day and you're driving toward it, it's like a beacon.
Wow. I'm trying to imagine it. I mean, that just feels like you said, like magic, like straight out of a fairy tale, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't really see that kind of experience out here, I feel
I
like.
know. Well, it's the antiquity, and I think that's what draws me. And maybe I don't know exactly what it means when people say that person is an old soul, but I've always been drawn to Europe from a very young age, and it's the antiquity. I feel a closeness to that more so than I do the newness of our country. I love our country. I love where I live. And I live where I live because guess what? We were discovered in like 1542 and we were founded in 1711. So we were one of the oldest cities there is on the East Coast. And there's that hint of Spanish, actually Scotland, the Scots is the Spanish, of course, the English and the French all were here. So even in our architecture, in our street names, we have that. So my home, my place here connects me again to my heart place in Italy.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're able to find that connection still being in a different
And
place.
yeah, and here's a Drusa in all her glory, my muse.
Yes,
She is my muse.
it is beautiful. Even more larger than life than I even was imagining, you know?
She's a
So,
warrior woman, and that really spoke to me on that solo journey because I think that's what I felt like. I felt like a great explorer at a not a young one, but I did. And she was there, and I heard those words, insieme sono forte, together we are strong. And it just resonated with me. And she's there to protect the harbor. She represents all those martyrs that were killed by the Ottomans. And she was placed there to make sure that never happened again, that they were never invaded again. And that just spoke volumes to me. And you can see the wall city there, those beautiful turrets and squares, and it's quite lovely and
yeah.
fierce. And I felt fierce. And that was a feeling I hadn't felt before, and it made me feel good.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I like that you're saying fierce, very fierce and strong. And there's just something so amazing about this picture. And just to imagine what it felt like to just stand there and be right there next to it.
And to feel coraggio, courage, courage. These are words that were not part of my vocabulary growing up. To say I was a fierce little kid, oh no, I was an obedient little kid. I was a perfect little lady. I didn't have any courage. I feared everything. So for me, coming into these words, finding my voice, was so powerful.
And I really appreciate that you share that journey in your memoir with people too. It's so cool to see and very inspiring.
This is one of the many cannonballs that those Ottomans fired into that walled city. They're everywhere. And I also write about them because some of them have been beautifully painted. And there's a tendency as a tourist that you walk by them and you not hear the story, not hear the fear, the pain of 800 people being beheaded. So to me, these are reminders, but it's like anything in our lives, we from day to day take them for granted. So they are just, we don't even think about them. They're just part of that background that as a child, I've always had that in my life, or even as an adult. I mean, I've got a massive, massive oak right outside my office window that is just gorgeous, and it's draped in Spanish moss. And I do, that tree is so significant in my life, but it's part of my day-to-day life. And yet any person who walks into our yard for the first time only sees the tree and goes, oh, wow, that's a big tree. So it's the same with the cannonballs. And so I like to remind myself, my desk is so I see that tree and remind myself how important that tree is and how life-sustaining it is.
I love that. That's such a cool thought too, to think about all the things that kind of blur and fade into the background in our daily lives that do mean something to us, but you actually have to like focus on it and really think about it again. It's interesting how our brains kind of just shut that down to keep up with the busy of everyday life.
Yes, it is. And there's the door, the front door to my apartment, number 16, Via Castello. And it's still there. And I couldn't find, could not find the owners of this apartment. It's not on any, VRBO or Airbnb. It's not on any of those. I can't even remember how I found it. I was just out scrolling through stuff and found it. I never met the owners, as I say in the book. I just left money when I left for them. So when I went back in the fall last year, I looked really hard for this and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I didn't have time. It was last year was really a year. So I was, so this time I go back, I'm going to do some more book events in spring. We leave April 5th. I took the time and just began to scroll through Italian sites, and lo and behold, I found it and I'm able to rent it again.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So I'm really happy. I think I'm really happy. Who knows? Things change. I've changed, Otranto has changed, yet our inner cores haven't. So we'll see if the inner core of the apartment has changed or not.
There's something so like amazing. The fact that, it is interesting to think about when you go back. Well, it'll be a whole different experience for you in the same place. And I wonder how that'll like resonate with you.
Well, the fact that I went back this past fall was which is why I'm going to write the sequel, because I did all the book presentations in the fall, in September and October. It was the whole journey was exhausting and magical combined. My publisher is quite a bit younger than I am, and has way surpassed the Energizer Bunny in her life. So for me to keep up with her was rather it was difficult, but she's a very exciting person, and she created excitement wherever she went. And the people were so generous and kind and fed me and gave me flowers. And welcomed me into their home. So it was, and I want to write all about that, because meeting some of the translators, like the kids in the classroom, and hearing their stories, hearing how they actually got to do that, was so wonderful. So this experience now, this will be the first time Ray's going with me. And so this will be a unique experience for him to stay here a month. He spent a couple of nights there, but we didn't explore or do anything. So this will be a new experience for him, because I will be doing book things and he will be left to explore. So I'm really excited about that, because there are so many fun things to do and see, and good places to eat. And I've made a lot of wonderful friends, new friends there now. So he'll be well taken care of while I'm running after Sally. And this is the view from that apartment. And again, you can see all the white, all the Greek.
Yeah, it's a very
There.
calming view. It's beautiful.
Yes. And it was either this way or it was really stormy. It was rarely in between, like sort of just a partly cloudy day. And the storms were fierce because they come up from Africa and roll over the sands of the Sahara Desert and roll across the Mediterranean, and they're quite fierce. But I love storms too, so I was happy with those as I was this beautiful clear day.
Oh, I love that. That's really interesting, actually. I never would have thought about like the storm systems, where they
Yeah.
came from and how much more they can impact like that.
This and they name their storms. Well, we call ours hurricanes or tornadoes. I don't think we name the tornadoes, do we? But we name the hurricanes. But
Yeah.
these have Tramonte and Sirocco, or the winds that come with these storms. So the locals will tell you which it is. They can tell from the winds, the temperatures, the humidity, the bugs they bring in, all that sort of stuff. So this is a stormy day, and this is a storm that's gathering. Later, when I went up after the storm, every single cushion was tossed on the terracotta there. The whole place was a wreck because it was very fierce. But again, here you see not the Greek influence, but the Arab influence. And this I called my Arabian Nights place, because it was very, very much the cushions and the colors. And even in the apartment, which I think you have some pictures of, the Moorish archways, the colors are spectacular. And the lack of faces with the Arabic influence in their design.
It's funny you bring that up. I am seeing that now, because I think the next couple of pictures, I can already see the pop of color on the bottom that are coming up. And then to see that difference, like, here's that next one.
Yeah. Yes. Under normal circumstances, I would not want to sleep there. It was like, whoa, I'll have nightmares. I'll see orange all night long. But it was like the sun in the bed with me, so it was pretty nice. I really liked it, and it was I don't know, it was strange how I've always been more neutral, and so this awakened all this wonderful side that I didn't know I had, with these clashing colors and bright opulent colors, and I just loved it. I wanted to steal them.
It's so happy and vibrant and energetic. And then we've got some more beautiful colors in this one. I love
that's that kitchen. I think they just kind of went crazy here. But that's the window there where I could see the trash lady. Trash lady.
Oh, that was a very interesting journey to follow. I felt for you with that one, like trying to kind of pick up on the signs.
One of the first things when I found this owner again for this next trip, I said to him, "Do you have written trash instructions in the kitchen?" I know he thought I was crazy. He hasn't read my book yet, and I'm not sure I'm going to make it known to him that I've written it.
Could you imagine though, like they put so much focus into it, which I assume means that there's a much more mindful like idea of trash. And if we all had to do that here, I feel like we'd have a lot less trash.
I know. I know. You would think it's I was so stunned by it that it really made me think, and that's how that came to be such a metaphor in my book. My own personal trash. I hadn't sorted it. I hadn't thrown a lot of it away. I hadn't recycled stuff. It was just a remarkable lesson that it taught me when I was so frustrated trying to figure out which trash can required what's trash. And it's 6 days, it's 6 days a week. Sunday's the only day you get off, but not Sunday night. You get Saturday night off, not putting the trash
Oh,
can
yep. To go out the next day. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the same all over Italy. And we had on this trip when we were in the fall, when we were in Sicily, they had the instructions on the wall, and I can read enough Italian now, so I could read it. So I was reading it to my husband, and I said, okay, this is what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. And so we do that. And he dutifully takes the trash down all those steps and puts it out. And the next morning, it's still there. And we had heard the trash pickup during the night. So we did that for 3 days. And finally, the trash people put a brochure on the can.
Oh.
So I'm reading the brochure, and I said to Ray, these instructions are different than the one on the wall. So I went back and reread the ones on the wall, and they were for summer. They weren't for the fall. We were there in the fall, and
oh my gosh,
owner hadn't posted any instructions for the fall.
So that's even more confusing to keep up with, because it's not just every day, it's every day in which season you're in.
Yes. So the instructions they gave me were actually, I should have sent you a copy of them. They were actually, it was pages of a month. It would be a month, a week at a time. So it was for October, November, and December. So each of those months changed, and each week changed.
I'd love to do like a deep dive and just see how this originated, both, here and out there, like the ways they take care of trash, like to be so different. I mean, I'm fascinated, actually. I never thought I'd be fascinated by trash.
Well, let me tell you this, because this was hilarious. When I was there doing my book presentation, one of the citizens gave me a big dinner party, which was quite lovely. And they only had one question for me, and that was about the trash. They didn't understand why I had written so much about it. It was just, as we talked about that oak tree, it was just in the background. It was just something they did. And they kept saying to me, why was it so important to you? So,
I love it.
It was so funny. I spent a lot of time laughing, not understanding what else they were saying about me.
Right? It is so fascinating too, though, like the actual just basics of the trash itself in the system and the metaphor for what you are going through. I mean, it's just such a rich, interesting, so much to think about reading your book.
No. Okay, we have the castle, the Castello Aragonese. This castle showed up in the first Gothic novel by Horace, I think his last name is Walpole. He never visited, yet he wrote a book about the castle of Otranto. It was one of those haunting, horrible, kind of things with talking voices and all. So that's one claim to fame. It's also was the last defense when the Ottomans attacked the city and killed so many people. And it's still, you can see the cannonball holes in the walls. And they have wonderful exhibits there now. They were having a Andy Warhol exhibit at that particular time, and that's actually Marilyn Monroe's picture on the sign there. But this was my neighbor. And when I was on the rooftop, I looked down on this castle, or not down, I looked eye level. I was looking down on where the entrance is, but I was like almost eye level. And if you look up and you see something red.
Yeah, is that like a kayak?
Yes, it's like it is. And I have yet to find someone, or I keep forgetting to ask someone, what is the significance of that? It has to have a significance. So that's on my list for this trip, is to say, what is that? Tell me.
I'd love to see, like, when you find out if it goes in a next book or share in the book
Okay.
club, because I'm curious too.
Yeah, and when I was there at this time, I didn't speak hardly any Italian. Now I have a much better grasp of it. So, and I was still in my old life that didn't want to feel dumb asking a question that may have come out, what is the red peacock doing on the castle instead of the red boat? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I had the word for red, and I had the word for boat, but putting them together in a sentence was not within my grasp.
Right. Oh, that is something though. I am definitely very curious. I wonder if it had to do with the exhibit, because I mean Andy Warhol is very specific, like, and kind of a art style. I don't
It could
know.
be. And the only way I'll know, because I do have a lot of pictures of the castle from this last visit. And I will tell you, I didn't look. So I'm going to go back and look at some of those photographs to see if the red boat is still there.
Yeah, I'm
And,
curious.
and if it's not, then you're right. It was part of the exhibit.
It's just
Yeah.
so out there. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. Yeah, what else it would be. And it was really exciting to see, like, when you sent me this, I was so excited because I read about that part in the book with Marilyn Monroe, like, hanging. I'm obsessed with Marilyn Monroe. Like,
Are
anytime I
you?
find yeah, if I find a book about her life, I pick it up. I've got like this huge collection of just books about her.
Wow. What started that?
I don't know. Like, I've just always been, I like to watch old shows still. I've got like the old collections of Bewitched, or I will pick up like I Love Lucy or something. Like, I don't know. There's just something, the era
Yeah.
before is a little more comforting to me. And I've just always kind of been obsessed. I love like all of her quotes, and just kind of that, I don't know, like she was so kind of sad, but she always put on a happy face. And I've just always been so interested to, I just like to find all the happy stuff about her. There's something comforting about that.
Because part of her was magical. And for me, part of her was never allowed to be magical.
Yeah.
And that's the sadness that I think I finally recognized that in myself. And I don't think she ever had the opportunity to recognize that you continually do what other people want you to do or expect you to do without without your own voice, without being who you truly want to be, for great fear that you will get just people will not approve of you.
Yeah.
And she certainly was a little older than I am, but still that was an era that women were just like she was. They were just so much chattel. She was used, and it's a very sad place.
It is. Yeah, she was definitely even above and beyond, I feel like, objectified. Like, they put
Hmm.
her in such a pigeonhole. I actually, like, I'm so obsessed. I watched this old interview that you can find on YouTube where she was in the house of Milton Green, who was one of her friends and photographers. And I honed in on this point where they asked her, like, about magazines she's been in or things she'd like to be in. And her answer was just so, like, you could tell she wanted to do other things and they pigeonholed her in. Like, she said that she wanted to be in one of the women's, it's like a life magazine, like Women's Life, because she's always in like the Peep magazines, is how I think she
Yeah.
said it. And she wanted something else more, intellectual and and just relatable. And it made me so sad, but I'm like, she was trying so hard to say what she wanted, but people, I think, just glossed over it.
Yeah. Yeah. They wouldn't let her be who she wanted to be. They wouldn't let her
Yeah.
say what she wanted to say. Yeah. Yeah. It's quite a prison. So breaking out of it is a challenge, and we don't always, it doesn't always happen, which makes it even sadder.
Yeah. I wonder if this was some kind of like sign for you there, like, even though you didn't go into the exhibit, like, to see her hanging there, because she did have that same kind of struggle where, she had to realize on the other side of this is what I want to be and who I want to be and what I want to say and how I want to present myself. And like you're saying, that same kind of struggle. So
Yeah.
I found
Yeah.
that very interesting that she was like hanging outside your window one day.
Yes, and I really thank you for bringing it to my attention, because I looked at her every day and my heart always felt sad when I looked at her. So that, again, that's a tremendous connection, and it's a lovely thought though too, that she was there sort of as a signal that this was really important for me.
Yeah, and then it's okay to kind of break through and say what you want, and do what you want.
Yeah. Okay, now you see the resemblance to that little,
Oh yeah,
and then
definitely do.
and the one in the book in on
Yep.
the chapters. So there we go. That's the Salento sun. And it's depicted in so many ways in this region. And fortunately, I had seen it often painted blue. Otherwise, I'd have been crying over my mosaic when I couldn't find any yellow or red marble. So it worked out. And the gates are still there. So that was nice. The school, I don't know. And that's on my list to try and find out this time. The school was not there. And it's a language school, and it was a certified language school that happened to have a mosaic class.
Yeah.
So I really want to try and find them. I doubt seriously if Barbara is still the director, because that's been a long time, but still it would be nice to know if I could find her through the school. So that's on my list.
Oh, that's cool. Good luck with that. I hope you get to find her.
And these are just the few steps for the readers to get a feel what this was like. First of all, I was terrified. And I think that's clear in the book, because my instructor spoke not a word of English, and I spoke maybe 15 or 20 Italian words, none of which had anything to do with mosaics. Mostly how to get to the bathroom and help. So this was my first sketch of the design from the gate. And you already see some of the little pieces of marble that I've been cutting that will later on fill in the spots.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it drawn out and how you have to think about the shapes of the pieces, like such a puzzle.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not that good at puzzles. So
So you went to the ultimate puzzle.
yeah. So I went straight to the thing that I couldn't do again. Again, I had the freedom to do that. And again, here are my tools. My tool, I should say. There are no S on that, no plural.
Yeah.
This was my stone cutter. I think there's a book I read called Stone Cutter that I really liked because I could relate to it. But it shows you, this was at the end of that first day, and it showed I had one Blu-ray in place, and I wanted to get the heck out of there.
Yeah, just looking at that tool makes my wrist hurt for you.
Yeah. And I'm not an athletic person. I was never athletic. I'm the kind of person that when a ball comes toward me, I cringe and
Me too.
and it hits me, which is worse. So this, and I'm not artistic. I write. But I'm not artistic with colors and paint and any of that. So this was such a challenge for me, and it was really the hardest kind of craft work I'd ever tried to do. But it gave me such an appreciation for those craftspeople. The floor in the cathedral will soon be 900 years old.
Wow.
It's as smooth as glass. If I could walk barefoot on it, I would, because it's so beautifully smooth. Everything I did was lumpy and bumpy, and backbreaking. And I had a chair. You think in 1163 they didn't have chairs; they were squatting or kneeling or sitting on the floor, and they didn't have electricity. So think about that. I thought about it, and it just almost wept every day thinking about what it required for us to still have these magnificent works of art, whether it's painting or mosaics or the architecture, and to be able to see them. and to connect with the spirit of the people who created them. And there we go. Now, this is where I went off the grid with my red stones.
You're just thinking outside the box.
Yeah. See, because all my life I had thought inside the box. I'd colored inside the lines and always been that, yes, obedient child. Not always, but most of the time. And it was at the end of a long day, and I was just straightening up, and I had reached way back in the back of the cabinet, and I'd found this one little bit of red marble. And it was just like, again, it's that magical kind of thing. It was like, oh, red. I love red. Red would really liven this kind of dull piece up. So I cut what was there and stuck it in, which screwed up the pattern totally. I never was able to get back to that pattern, but somehow I found my voice by not having the pattern. So it worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is that literal you had to finally just step outside the box and be allowed to play and enjoy.
Yeah. So, and here is what it looked like when we put the mortar on it. And you see that stick, that's my second tool that I had. And this is where the problem came in, because my mosaic was not smooth. The stones were not lined up perfectly. And you had to use this tool on a slant so that you didn't hit in between the pieces, because you'd knock the mortar out. And I did do that somewhere. But so as I dragged that across, those uneven stones just ripped my knuckles open.
Oh.
So I was quite a mess. And yes, when you see my piece in person, there's still some blood in there that I couldn't get out.
Gives it character.
Yeah. And there's my finished piece. And
It
I
is
will
gorgeous.
tell you, I was so proud of that piece. And again, if you remember me telling the story about when I left my second marriage and I enrolled in college for the first time, and I came running home with my very first A, and there was no one there, only me. And that's what this mosaic piece was like. I was sad the first time. This time I was happy. I was so thrilled I'd gotten through the class, and that I had actually created something that I wasn't ashamed of, that was okay for a beginner.
You know, that's so important too, with like talking about taking time for yourself and self-care. Like that thought where you were saying, you know, you were sad no one was there to share it with. But that's something I think we all do. Like we kind of put our happiness on the world around us. Like we have to share rather than be proud of ourselves. So I think that's another huge, amazing goal that you learned about yourself, and you're able to put out in the world that it's okay to not have to share, just be proud and
Yes.
happy with your own accomplishments.
It gave me such joy and it still does when I look at it. It gives me such joy.
And you put so much work into it, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And there's the little chapel, the one that has the sailing knots and where the fishermen's wives went to pray and still do. It's tiny. You can probably not get more than 20 people, maybe 30, shoulder to shoulder. And no one was ever there, and it became my sanctuary. And I love that particular Mary with the baby Jesus. One of the things, he wasn't a baby. He was an intelligent child. I like that about him. And but I love, most of all, I love the sailing knots. I love the seahorses were the lights, and the altar was put together with the helm. I think that's what you call the steering mechanism on a sailing boat, the helm. And also the chandelier was a helm with the lights on it. So everything about it was a nautical theme. And it was just such a sweet, sacred little place. And most days I was either there or I was on my knees examining the mosaic floor in the cathedral. And I'm not a religious person. I consider myself a spiritual person. But again, when I'm in Europe, I'm so drawn to the antiquity of spirit there that it really resonates with me, and I feel so at home in these places. So I don't know, maybe
That's
another
really
life. Who knows?
maybe. Yeah. There's something about it that like I get a feel from your book that religion and history just kind of blend for them. They're so
Mhm.
intertwined.
Yes, they do. All the important moments. Now, the Italians are not churchgoers, any shape or way or form, but all of the important moments in their lives center there: birth, marriage, and death. And we have wonderful friends, Gaetana and Clara. And when Clara was diagnosed with cancer, Gaetana told me that's where he went. He went back to the church they were married in and prayed for her to be spared. And it was, again, I cry every time I think about it, because fortunately she was, and we see them every year we go. But I just thought how important that was to him, that was one of those moments in his life that was so pivotal that he needed to be in that sacred place that was sacred for him.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really deep connection to be able to come back to that when you need it.
Mhm. And there's the floor. I do not have any great pictures of the floor, and it's a very muted floor. It's not a dazzling filled with colors, because you think about it, it's almost 900 years old. So at one time, those colors were very rich. But you can see the trunk of the tree of life going right up. And then the thing I love the most about this, Pantaleone, who created this floor, was such an eclectic monk. And he had to have a fantastic sense of humor. And the church fathers were clueless because he's got all sorts of pagan rituals in this floor in this grand cathedral. And I love that about him. I mean, he's got King Arthur, he's got Diana, who's one of my favorite goddesses. And then he's got astrological signs. Of course, he has Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus too. But he's got all this other stuff in there. And if it hadn't been for meeting Paola, who was our guide, and whom, I've stayed in touch with, he's the one person that I stayed in touch with all these years. He was just so rich in history and art. And I got to see him when I went back in the fall. And then my publisher and friend Sally, he took her everywhere, so she knows him well now. But anyway, with him telling me the stories, it was just like, again, it was magic. And I sent him that chapter before the book was published for his approval, and he said, well, you kind of expounded on what I said. I said, well, that's my right as an author to do that.
That's right. That's part of that author license, right?
Yeah. But the only thing he didn't disapprove of, but he said that I really got wrong, was I talked about the seating, and how and I don't think I included that. I think I took that out, but the seating was you went from one place to the other. There were no seats. They stood. So I'm pretty sure I took the seating thing out and just said they stood. But it was based on wealth, where you stood, and whether or not you were given dispensation into habit. This is also in this part of the country, and also Basilicata, and probably in other places in Italy, is the first time I ran across what they call purgatory churches. I'd never heard of them.
Wow.
But the way they attracted me was there was a skull and crossbones instead of a cross on top. And I'm like, what is this? It was fascinating. And fortunately, I was with Paola and Alessandra in Matera, which is in Basilicata. And he said, oh, you'll find these all over Puglia. These are churches for people that are in between heaven and hell.
I've never heard of that before. That is really interesting that there's that
Yeah.
separate thing to go to.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you go about like saying this is my church. Like, how do you?
Well, it's actually for the people that have passed, have died,
Okay, it's
and
not like an actual.
and they've still got relatives that are praying to get them into heaven.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm like, I'm so clueless about this. That is so fascinating.
And honestly, Heather, I don't know if that's a wonderful story, a legend, or if there's any truth to it, because Paula is a fabulous storyteller, and he has that background in theater, and so he's fantastic. So he could have been pulling my leg, but I bought right into it.
It sounds interesting to me. I would have bought into it too. Yeah, but that floor is gorgeous. I feel like you could look at it every day for years and still find something new.
Yes, you can, and it's a study in and of itself, that every little piece of it has some significance. And you're right, there are people that do just that. They just study one little square. And on both the left and the right are side chapels up at the front. So, and I think the next photograph is of the chapel on the right. Oh no, that's a postcard of the whole floor. So you can see how big it is. It's like 800 square meters, which is, it's really quite large. It's one of the largest in the world.
Wow.
And so at one time, and I think this must be an artist rendition, so at one time it would have been very rich in those browns and taupes and reddish browns and cream colors.
Wow.
Then I think the next picture is the Chapel of the Skulls, maybe. Yes, this is the Chapel of the Skulls. And this is the remains of the 800 martyrs. Only Italians think to
Yeah,
gather them up and put them behind glass.
that is very interesting to display like that. Yeah.
I didn't give you a close-up picture because it is pretty morbid, particularly for Americans. We are not closely enamored of death, whereas so many cultures are. It's life. Death is life. So they don't have the same kind of sensibilities that we do about it. So if you look down to the front of the altar, you'll see an oval.
Yes.
And you can't quite tell what is in there. Well, if you move to the next slide, oops, no, I did do this.
You did,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry.
I forgot. That's
No,
okay.
oh, I didn't do it. I didn't put that in there. I'm so sorry. I have a big picture and I thought I'd put it in there. It's the beheading stone.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to remember because I just kind of put them in order of how you sent them too. So I don't know if
Yeah.
maybe you did and it's further on or something. So
Yeah.
we might come across it still.
Okay. So it was so, I mean, for me, it was like appalling, but once again, to them, it's sacred. And so this is where in the book I say Barbara took us there, a very small group of us there, and she showed us how we could, if nobody was looking, we could go behind the altar and we could touch the beheading stone, which I did, and which I did again when I went back in the fall. It's very special. However, this time when I went back in the fall, which was 10 years later, they had flowers all around it in the back. So I'm guessing more people are walking back there, so they're decorating it. So, okay, so you can move on quickly to the close-up I took, and I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I think, our culture, like you're saying, we're over here, we're not used to anything like this for a display. And it just, when I look at it, it's so hard to wrap my brain around it not, being real,
It's very hard. And one of the hardest things about it, because I spent a lot of time looking at it, was the different size and shapes of the skulls and bones. And they killed every male as young as, I think, probably 10 or 12 and up, anyone that they thought would take up arms against them. So it tells a very horrendous tale.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah,
it is. And there's the peeling cross, which is no longer peeling. This is the old picture, and that's Franco in the blue shirt and Carlo next to him And that's when Franco pulls this candle from nowhere and lights it and says a prayer. It was such a special moment. The whole world stood still. The birds that had been just making all this racket, there was not a single sound. The wind stopped. It was perfect peace and very
Wow.
beautiful and touching.
Yeah, it's like you found all kinds of magic along the way, because that does sound very like just magical.
Yeah. And there's the ancient lighthouse that has been there since the beginning of sailing vessels. The back of it, which I may have included another picture in color or not, I don't know, is all hollow. But this is the one with the story of the serpent entwining itself up there and drinking the oil, and all the ships were crashing against the rocks and the sailors were dying. And that's the legend that Carlo told me that frightened him, because he'd been told that as a child.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's not something you want to hear as a
I
child. I was
know.
very fascinated reading that though. I love to hear stories and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow. I had never heard of it before.
And that's the back of it, and that's on a nice bright sunny day.
It's funny how different the two pictures look from the
Yeah, it
lighting. And
really is. And on
yeah.
this return trip, that certainly was one of my pilgrimages that I made up there, to see that, because again, it's like the sentinel standing, guarding, watching, making sure that those shores are not invaded again. And it's a it's a powerful structure for me. A symbol, I guess, a powerful symbol, I should say. Now, this is
Yeah.
the very modern lighthouse that was built in 1850. So, but to their sensibilities, it's new, it's contemporary. But this is where the Roman troops would have walked. The pathway I took down was, according to Carlo, was where the Roman troops were, where they spent the night, where they guarded the shores. We nearly killed ourselves walking down there to that lighthouse and back up. If you go there now, they've got ropes for people to hold on to. They've
Oh,
got
wow.
pathways all cleared up. So again, many people come there because this is actually that little peak when we talked about on the map. This is actually where that lighthouse is the very furthest point. So there are all these people that come to see the morning sun rise there. And you need super duper sunglasses. It is so blinding. That day we were there, none of us could see when that brilliant sun hits the water, and those rocks turn white, and then there were sheep grazing that were white. And I just thought, I have to get out of here. It hurts. It was so dazzling.
Wow.
But again, an experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so mind blowing to think about the difference of how crystal clear and bright it is there. Like, to just put myself in that mindset of what it would be like to stand there and feel that, where it's so bright that it's painful but dazzling.
Yes, yeah. Another moving moment, and there we are. And this is the photo that I love so much, because Franco is actually singing to me. He's actually singing "O Solo Mio,"
Oh,
and
while
he
this photo
told
was being taken.
yes, while it was being taken. And he said to me before, he said, I want you stretch your arm out. I want all your friends to see how beautiful this place is, this land, the Salento land. And then he just broke into song, and I'm like, and he had been a former singer, so he was excellent. I mean, his voice was gorgeous. He had recorded albums, none of which I knew until this happened. And Carlo told me that later. He said, he's masterful. And I just was like, wow.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
you can see the funny thing, because you see the Ufficio di Turista.
Yep.
That was how big that was. And you remember how long it took me to find the tourist office? It's out of the wall city. So I was not looking out of the wall city.
Yeah. Well, whenever
Now,
you're anywhere new, I mean, that makes sense if you don't know where to go, you know?
Okay, now we on to glorious food.
Looks delicious.
Yeah, this is a aperitivo, and if you order this in Italy, particularly in the South, and at this moment, now it's changed, it's far more expensive now, but when I was there, I got this platter and a drink, and I had an Aperol Spritz, which is divine, for 10 euros. And there wasn't a morsel on it that wasn't delicious. And I think I described some of the food that was on there.
Yeah, I love your food descriptions. It made me
Oh,
hungry. I was like,
thank
I gotta
you.
try all of this.
I know. And this is a tarelli, a tarello, because plural is tarelli, tarello. And
Oh,
this is the local, this would be a peanut here. When you go to a bar and they push out a plate of a bowl of peanuts, you'd get a bowl of tarelli, tarelli, and this is one. And you can get them here. Do y'all have Publix grocery stores?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, you may be able to find them. They're either plain or they're seasoned with rosemary or with fennel. And the fennel ones are my favorite because I love fennel. And they're delicious. And I usually, when I do book presentations, I try to have them there. Everybody's like, what is this? And they're very hard. And again, Italians dunk. They dunk their things. You know, like biscotti. We
Oh,
eat
yep.
those, try to eat those and break them. They dump them in sweet wine before they eat them.
Ooh.
They dump them in a wine called Vin Santo, which is holy wine, and which was originally the wine that the priest used. But it turned in, and then the priest or monks in particular, to make a living, they sold the wine. So they called it Vin Santo, and eventually it became a really popular dessert wine that you can buy here now. And you dunk your really hard biscotti into that for it to soften. So these the same way. You dip them into your glass of wine. I don't. I like the crunch, but they're hard. They're sort of like I was gonna say maybe a bagel, but a really hard dried out bagel kind of
Like
thing.
really overcooked, kind of
Yeah.
crisp.
Mm-hmm. Kind
That's
of
interesting. Yeah, because looking at this
hard.
picture, I was trying so hard to tell what the texture would be because some of it looks like it could be like a soft bread, and then other parts look so
Yeah.
like crunchy.
It's really hard. It would be like if you were a pioneer and you were going to be gone for a week, you'd pack that with you. Or if you're going to be gone for a year, you'd pack that with you and it would last.
Forever. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. That's really interesting.
And this is, and I'm so thankful I did take this one picture of Il Cantico dei Cantici. And this was the place where the Last Supper took place. This is the place where the chef, and he's over on the left in the white t-shirt. That's the chef. Let me name the dancing octopus dish and where my friend Francesco worked. And none of them they're all gone. So that was very sad, but understandable. With COVID, we all changed drastically. And so many people lost so much. And we all
Yeah.
we lost connection, quite frankly. And that's what I hope storytelling will bring back to us.
I hope that too. That's a beautiful sentiment to think about too, because it really needs to still stay in place with all the changes.
Mm-hmm. And this was the first meal I had at that restaurant, and it was lunch. And this is when Francesco warned me only to order this and not order anything else. This was the appetizer. And it's all fish, and it's just beautiful. And if you are finicky about fish, then don't order raw fish. But their waters are so clean and so pure. A lot of their fish is raw, and the tuna, which is on top with the red pepperoncini strands, that is raw, and it is sashimi quality. So if that's how you say that, I'm not sure that's right. So it is shaved. I mean, it's paper thin. You could read through it, but beautifully done. And I think everything else on there is cooked.
It
Maybe
is beautiful. It looks like a piece of art.
It does. It does. And delicious. And you can see my notebook off to the side where I'm taking notes.
That's like that perfect experience picture, like taking
Yeah.
notes, eating the beautiful food.
Right, yes. And again, the markets, I think, maybe I did some other market pictures, but I love the markets. Again, when people go to the big crowded cities, they have big, good markets too. But these little mom and pop markets are delightful. They're like our farmers market here in Beaufort that we have, where you know everybody and everybody knows everybody, and you go to the market because you got to get all the local gossip. And then you buy a big chunk of Parmesan while you're there. I just love seeing Parmesan and those huge wheels. It's something we don't see. So
Yeah.
great fun.
Yeah, that is cool to see it in its form like that.
And here's the famous dish of the dancing octopus. So, and it was good. And of course, I'm a real fan of squid and octopus, and Italians know how to cook it to perfection. The first time Ray had it, he swore he'd never eat it again because he got it in the United States. And I said, well, you never ordered it in the United States unless you're in New York or maybe DC or somewhere in California where they know how to cook it. But in Italy, everybody knows how to cook it, and it just melts in your mouth. It's so good.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's something I've never come across the idea of eating before. So it was really cool to see all the different cuisines.
Yes. And again, the orecchiette, I love this. Orecchiette is a specific pasta to Puglia. Every region has a specific pasta. Orecchiette means little ears, and they're shaped like your little part of your ear here. And the nonnas make those, and they're delicious. And this one is with tomato sauce and mussels. The traditional way of having it is with wild greens and sometimes sausage. But the wild bitter greens they love with this orecchiette. And all the pasta is made for specific foods and specific sauces. Orecchiette are made as little ears to catch the sauce. So if you don't want, you might use another kind of pasta if the sauce is lighter or different, but they want it. This is perfect for catching the sauce and holding it.
There's so much thought that goes into how to put it together. That's so cool.
And learning to make pasta is again, a joy. It's an art. It's craft. We've done it several times. We make it ourselves. We've been to cooking school in Italy, and oh my gosh, it is wonderful. Even if you can't do it right, just the experience of doing it's so thought-provoking.
That's cool. And I'm so like, see, it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about with your tree earlier, where things kind of blend in the background. Like I'm so used to just pasta in a box, boil it, like you don't think about appreciating it.
Yes. Oh, there it is. There's the
I thought I had seen it when you said you're looking for that. I'm sorry if I put it out of order there.
So this is the beheading stone. And it's illuminated, as you can see.
Yeah, the close up, like it looks so different than before.
And behind the altar, and I do have a picture of that, but I didn't bring it because I was so perturbed by the pots of flowers around it. I didn't decide not to include it. But it's large, and you only see a small portion of it peeking through there. So it's a very large stone. Now the interesting part of this legend is that the bones of the 800, and they call them martyrs, but the 800 people from Otranto were left. They were massacred on the hill, which was Miniver's Hills, and which was changed to the Hill of the Martyrs. But their bones were left there. So it was like 2 years later before the bones were collected.
Wow.
So how would you know that was the beheading stone? Certainly the storms would have washed away all the blood.
Right.
So but it's a story, and I love this. I don't love the story. It's a sad story, but it's a story, and it tells so much more than people being killed. It's a story of courage and standing up for what you believed in, because the legend is that the Ottomans said if the people converted to Muslim, that they would let them live, and they chose not to convert. Now later there's another story that's more factual. But anyway, the legend is that connects the people is that in the face of horror, they stood firm in their belief. That's a strong story full of courage. So they have their story. So it's what it is.
Yeah, that's the power in it, that, they were
Yes.
making a stand and showing,
Yes.
hey, this is the right thing to do, and we're doing it no matter what.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to flip 6 years later. So I returned from Otranto. In my epilogue, I write about what happened in the intervening years, some of the horror that occurred in my life, very painful experiences. Yet that experience in Otranto helped me not just endure the pain and sorrow, but also to embrace it as a part of living and to grow as a result of it. So I, at that time, had no thought about writing a memoir. I had thoughts about writing about the massacre, about the mosaic floor. And I also was writing by then for local magazines. And so we returned to Italy, never again to Puglia. I just decided I wouldn't. But at some point, we moved, and I joined a writing group, and I had to bring a first reading to the writing group to see if I would fit in with the writing group, and they were to critique it. Now I'm a writer. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a reading out loud person. I'm not any of those things. So I was petrified. But I had journaled the whole time I was in Otranto. So I took the trash, some parts of the trash, and wove it into what I thought was kind of a funny story. And the writing group loved it and thought it was wonderful and said, well, this is your book. You're writing a book already. And I'm like, no, it's the first time I've attempted to do this. So little by little over the years, because I joined them in 2016, I wrote this book. So it was a very long, painful writing with me never wanting to write anything about myself. So in 2018, and I'm still in the writing group, and I'm really close to finishing this book, we rent this villa, and I've got this picture in it because I love this place. This is a villa in Sicily, and it's called Villa Chiera. And I found it, and the woman who owns it, it is her personal house. But she was living in the United States because she wanted her daughter to be educated in the United States. So she was renting her personal house out, and I happened upon her personal house, and Ray and I rented. And of course, we fell in love. Now, we had been to Sicily. Had we been once or twice? I think we'd been maybe one time to Sicily. And we did like it. So this was a return trip. And my husband was very sick at the time. And we had talked to the doctor about whether or not we should travel. And he said, this is perfect, because we had planned to stay in one place and not go anywhere. And he had started Ray on some new medications. And he said, within 2 weeks, he's going to feel like a new person. And he did. Another bit of magic, he did. And we had a glorious trip, and it was really peaceful and restful. And what you can't see behind the house are greenhouses. Sicily is the breadbasket of all of Italy and almost all of Western Europe. And their produce is heavenly. And it's grown everywhere, all over the island. It's that and olive oil and some of the best wines I've ever had. But that's they're agrarian. So that's their biggest thing that they produce, besides some beautiful pottery from Caltagirone. So the front of the house, which you see, overlooked the Mediterranean. So it was spectacular. So I'm going to try to make this a shorter story because it's kind of a long story. We were so in love with it that I contacted the woman's name who owned it was Sally. I contacted her and we began to email or text and call each other. And we really liked each other. And I told her, I said, is it going to be available next year? And she said, well, yeah, it will be. And I said, well, we'd like to rent it again. And we did. And that was 2019. And I want to share with you that this is the place where I finished, which was then The Importance of Trash. My manuscript, I wrote the last sentence in this place. And so it has a very special meaning for me. And also because the friendship grew. And we got home in late, actually the 1st of November of 2019. And Sally contacted me and said that she and her daughter were going to be looking at colleges on the East Coast, and they were going to look at the College of Charleston, and could we arrange to meet or something. And of course, we told them to come and stay with us. We just live an hour or so south of Charleston. So our friendship became even stronger. And when my book came out, of course, now you have to know, they came in February 2020. March 15th, 2020, we all went underground, and it was years before we came out.
Yeah.
And my book was released in that madness. So it's been a really dark blight on things for everybody. But I was so hopeful because what I hope people will get out of my book is joy more than anything else. And I think I named it in 5 parts, and the last part is called Joy, because joy resonates with me. Finally solved all my problems, was to feel joyful and grateful. It was like, life's going to give you all the garbage you want, all the trash you need to sort through. So if you can approach it, if not joyfully, at least grateful that you've got some trash to sort through.
Yeah.
It makes things better. And I've just practiced that now. So all of that happened, and I was supposed to have a big book launch at the Pat Conroy Literary Center. It didn't happen. Everything I had set up canceled. But what did happen out of that is Sally and I made a connection. And when the book finally came out, she read it and fell in love with it and said, I've never been to Puglia. I'm going to go to Puglia. Now, all this time, I know very little about Sally. I don't know that she's a genius. I don't know that she retired at 36 because of patents and things that she's done and created. I don't know she has a publishing company. It's small, it's personal, but she has a publishing company. I don't know any of this. She reads my book. When they finally lift some of the restriction in Italy, she goes to Puglia. I introduce her through email and WhatsApp to Paola. She meets Paola. He takes her around. She meets the mayor through another city official, and the mayor wants to know if the book can be translated into Italian. And the rest is magic. That's how this whole thing started. And it all started there.
That is absolutely amazing. I love all of that. And I did want to go back and touch on, you were saying, you hope it brings joy to people. I think the timing, even though I feel really bad that you had to go like release it during the shutdowns and the pandemic and it kind of canceled your launch, but I think it does amazing things for people. Like I'm not a traveler. I'm too much of a worrier. I love the idea of traveling, but it's just too much for me. So it's so cool to be able to kind of travel with you in your book. And in a time when people are shut in, they can travel, and they do. There's so much joy, and just there's something really cool about all the thought that comes from your book. Like just the idea of, okay, well, what is the trash in my life? Because now then get rid of it now or never, like why let it keep building up? And your book does bring a lot of joy and amazing things to people. So
well, thank you. Yeah. And I wish I had found joy earlier, but I'm just thankful I found it.
It's quite a journey. And like we were talking about, the life hasn't always been in the direction to let people have that space for what they need to have that inner peace and time to reflect. I think hopefully going forward, it sounds like the world's kind of putting more of that into perspective, and things like your book, when people come across that, kind of put that more in perspective of like, this should be a common practice.
Yes, it should be. And one of the things that that is such a cultural difference is with Americans, busyness is a sign of importance and sign of status. It's all that kind of thing. In Italy and in other cultures, that's learning to open your heart. Has far more significance. They're trying to buy into some of our ways, and I keep saying, please don't, please don't.
Yeah, they've got it right. This is
Yeah,
too busy, too
you've
much.
got it right. We don't have it right. One of the things I think the pandemic did also, it taught a lot of people, people don't want to go back to work. They realized I was enclosed, but I had some freedom. I wasn't in this hard, fast-paced, moving world day in and day out. So I think it did give some perspective. There's some positive things we can take away from it. But I think as Americans, our emphasis is on intellectual aspects of our lives more than emotional aspects of our lives. And with Italians, for me, my interpretation in being with them, it's the opposite. And when you have Italian friends, when you make Italian friends and they invite you into their home, it's a really big thing. Because normally it's family, normally it's close, normally it's to the people that they are just with. So when they invite you into their home, they've opened their hearts to you. And it's beautiful to gather around the table. They sure know how to do the table thing and the food thing.
I love that. And I love that you bring that up in your book too. Like towards the end, it's so beautiful the way you worded that about, just being able to sit around a table and solve the world's problems together.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's Sally for the first time, and she's in Otranto. And this is in this would be the summer of 2021. So a lot of what we will talk about going forward has to do with the translation. The original book stops with me going home, and this is a big continuation. And this will be a sequel, but I'm more than happy to talk about it because it's a wonderful story.
Yeah, this is so exciting. And especially the way that it happened to you too.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
it just all kind of felt like it sounds like it was just meant to be.
Yeah. And here's Paola. Isn't he a sweetheart?
Yeah, look at that smile.
And he's like, as I say in the book, he's like 6'5", which is unheard of in Italians. I keep asking him, what kind of gene do you have that made you grow like that? But he is a dear person and friend. And it was so nice for him to have Sally meet him and for him to do it. He did a tour in other parts of Puglia with her. So that was really nice too. And then of course I got to meet him again when I went back in the fall. And that's Giovanni at the Blue Bar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So he's still there. He's a fixture. He will never leave. He didn't come to my book launch because he was working. He told me how disappointed he was. He said, I can't take off. So, and of course, it was still kind of touristy because it was the first part of September. So they were, and they do he runs with his wife a restaurant too. So they were busy.
It's so cool to see these pictures and see him like holding your book.
Okay, now here's the mayor. And this is my probably my best story and my craziest story and my saddest story, because here he is now. Sally has given him the spiel about my book, and he's issued the invitation for figure out how to get the book translated, and I'm to come. So that's July. It may have been, I'm not sure if it was June or July of 2021. And so Sally and I talk, because we're on WhatsApp, so we talk a lot. And she said to me, do you think we can pull this together in a year, get this book translated? I said, well, sure, if you can do it, I can do it. So she tentatively set up with him that we would be back the following September in 2022. And he was very excited about the possibility. He was so excited. He's done so much for Otranto. He has really enhanced it. He's really brought tourists into the area that were never there before. So that's how that story started out. So in July, so we go all through the translation process, which is another whole story. But that's that June in 2022, they have an election. And Sally calls me and she's frantic. She said, it didn't dawn on me that he may not be reelected. And it's the city and the mayor who has set this up, and it said we can do it. She says, if he doesn't get reelected, I don't know what we're going to do. We have to start from scratch again. And starting from scratch in Italy is really tough. She had to work on this for a whole year, getting it set up. So, but he won. And she told me, she said, the people adore him. He's wonderful. Everybody loves him. In July, I get COVID. I've had every shot. I've had every booster, and I get COVID. And I'm ill, and I'm supposed to leave August 21st to fly back to Italy for this book tour. And I'm really ill, and I'm not paying much attention to anything. And she keeps trying to contact me. Finally, I say to her what I think is from my deathbed, Halie, I can't do anything. She said, there's something going on. There's something going on in Otranto. And I go, what do you mean there's something going on? She said, there's some scandal around the mayor. So I'm like, oh, no. I said, should I cancel my flights? She says, no, I'll let you know. So lo and behold, she tells me to come. I fly in I arrive on August 22nd. I arrive in Otranto, and he has been indicted. And we have no contacts, and I'm supposed to do this big grand
boy
on September the 3rd. So we sort ourselves out, and eventually the vice mayor takes over and introduces me. But he is in jail now on fraud charges. So it's a story to tell, yet it's a story that's heartbreaking because he did so much good. And his supporters say he was set up because the government in the north, Bari, felt that he was overstepping his bounds, and more tourists were being directed to Otranto than to Bari. So it's just like here, all this political intrigue. But I was so disappointed because I so wanted to meet him. I mean, he's a kind of a handsome guy, and I thought, well, that'll be nice. I'll get to meet the mayor. But I never got to meet the mayor.
Oh no. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that things worked out for you still with everything you had planned with the bumps. Oh my goodness.
This is why I have to write a sequel, because this was as much, if not more, of an adventure than my first trip. And of course,
whole separate adventure.
I know. Of course, I was solo again too. For 6 weeks of the book tour, I was without Ray. He joined me at the end, but he wasn't there with me, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
So there we are. Una Americana in Salento. And it was beautifully done. And it was done by a group of translators. And Sally chose to do this because she knew one person couldn't do it in the amount of time we had. But after she'd read the book, she said, I had created such a sense of community that's what she wanted to foster. And that no matter where we live, community is so important. And she felt that by reaching out to teachers, to professional people, and collecting this group of people that spoke both English well and, of course, were Italian, that she would create this community, and that wherever we went on our book tour, we would be welcomed. And we were, because one of these translators was in the midst. So story after story, and there are pictures of me with I don't know if the next picture is of me with any of the translators I've tried. No, oh no. Yeah. I can't believe it. I sent you this picture, Heather. This was the saddest thing, other than the mayor, because Puglia produces more olive oil than any other part of Italy, and most people don't know that. So when I was there previously, you have to fly into either Bari or Brindisi, and I flew into Brindisi, which is an hour north. And as you drive to Otranto, it was glorious because there was nothing but olive groves, where you see what has happened. The olive trees have gotten a bacterium in them, and they are all dying. And the people are suffering so badly as a result of this. It's very tragic, and something most of the world doesn't really know about. So I arrived with this in my thoughts and feeling very, very sad. But fortunately, I got good news as time went on.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because that is very sad.
Yeah. This was the other sad news I got.
Oh no.
I didn't remember what photos I'd sent you. Oh my gosh. So I get there, and well, when you travel internationally, it's exhausting. So you're very wise in some aspects not to do it. So there was an hour drive from where I live to the closest airport. The closest airport takes me to a big airport, and the big airport takes me to Rome, and then I have to catch another flight. So I'm 36 hours into no sleep, not eating right or not eating at all, and just exhausted. And I WhatsApp. I love WhatsApp. I have to tell you, it's invaluable.
I use it too. I love it.
Yeah, person I rented the apartment from to meet me, and she does, and she leaves. And the one thing she didn't tell me is that the front door automatic locks behind you. And I'd left my luggage outside. She'd taken me in and shown me around the apartment, how everything worked. And I left it outside. So I just walked out, and the door slammed behind me. I had no key.
Oh no.
So I'm so tired. It's one of those really whiny moments where you just want to lie down and kick your heels and cry and have somebody fix it. But I didn't. I WhatsApped her and said, how far are you away? And she came right back. Now, you saw those buildings. They're concrete or stone. They're not buildings you could break into easily. But she had left the only window on the front that went into the bathroom. She had left that unlocked. So we were able to crawl through the window and get in.
Oh, wow. That was lucky. I'm glad.
Yeah. So now I'm really tired. Now I'm really exhausted. Now I'm really anxious, trying to make sure I've got keys and everything. And I make the mistake of saying, well, I'm going to go. I have to see the old city. I have to see it before I go to sleep tonight, because I'm staying in a place that's just outside. So I go, and there's all this monstrosity of whatever lighting things that I've never seen before. And they're everywhere. And I realize August they have all these end of summer festivals. So everything lights up at night, everything is gaudy. Tourists are everywhere. And I'm astounded because you saw the first picture I sent of the promenade. There was no one there, not a single soul but me. And I'm looking at hundreds and hundreds of people, and these streets inside the old city they're not streets, they're just pavers, like your sidewalk maybe. And they're just clogged. You can't get through. It's so bad. And so I'm remembering how I ended my book, where when people said to me, will you ever go back? I said, no, I'll never go back because it will never be the same. And I'm thinking I'm just going to cry, but I don't. I keep going. And then I see the Ferris wheel and I'm mortified, but I keep going. And I see the water, which is a little better, but I also you see those white sparkly things down there that have
more of the stands of lights.
Yeah, I see those. So I'm still not real happy, but I'm happier. And then I see this is the lape. These are the little motorized things that I rode into that festival that were falling apart, where you can see what the tourists have done. They've decorated these things. I'm like, what is that? Because it usually just looks like a golf cart with a plastic roof and a plastic windshield on it. Now they're every color, size, shape.
It's so vibrant, the decoration, the color. And
yes.
Oh, that's funny. Now that you say it too, like thinking about it as decoration over it, like I can really see where it overlaps, like over the tires. Like it's just a drape.
It's all their artwork, but it's dreadful. Yeah, it's sort of like that's one sort of like canvas. Some of them were painted, the metals were painted, but they added sides to these things, and and that's the lape, which is the bee, the little buzzing carts that go around. And this shows you how crowded those little streetways are at night.
Yeah, talking about that picture you were mentioning before, where there's nobody, and then seeing the streets all full and the tables.
And then I go home and go to bed. And the next morning, I'm an early riser. So the next morning, I'm alone again. I'm really, really joyful and really grateful. And I stood in that spot and just let it soak me and say, okay, the gaudy things will go. The tourists will go. This is that first light, that beautiful dawn. And I'm so grateful to be alive and to be back. That's the main portal into the old city, the old wall city.
It's so pretty. It looks so nice to just stroll through.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful when no one's there. Of course, that's not good for the shopkeepers, right. And the restaurants, but it was really good for me.
So are those shops, and they have the stuff outside too in collections?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. You have to remember it's tiny in there, really tiny. So the shops are all closed, and this is glass enclosed, those displays are. But when they open, their wares come outside. Very little stays in the shop because they're tiny. They would be like less than the size of my office. They're very small. And that's the cathedral. Again, it's amazing that I could get shots without people in them. It was like 5:30, I think. And there is a drusa. And then I knew I was home. It was just there she was in all her glory.
Yeah, to get to visit her again.
Yeah, that to me was just amazing. And the little pizza place that I talk about in the book, it's still there.
Oh, good. Those are really pretty doors to enter.
Okay.
Yeah, it like going back to the magic. It feels very magical and whimsy.
Mm-hmm. And there are the gates. They're still there. The school's gone. And this is where I had my book released in Otranto. The library is right behind it, which I just loved. And the library had displays of my book. I mean, hundreds of my books. They were all over the shelving. They were on tables. They were just wonderful about welcoming me there. And that night, not that night, but on September the 3rd in the evening is where my book, my translation was done and presented. And there's not my translator. This is my Italian teacher. This is Valentina. Wanted to show you Valentina because we're still in touch. And she so graciously, through a friend of a friend of a friend, agreed, because she has a full-time job, agreed to come and help me put together my presentation in Italian. So we worked very hard and very well together, and she was delightful and is delightful.
This is a great picture. You both look so happy.
Yeah, she was tough. I have to give her that. And here's Paola and I again. This is when we meet up for the first time after 10 years.
Aww. And again, you both look so happy. I love it.
And Giovanni at the Blue Bar.
That's really pretty. Is that off to the left? What is that there through the windows?
Let me think. Oh yeah.
Really
So there's one of the, I never know what to call their streets because they're not really streets, but it's a pathway, goes right down alongside that. So I can't tell whether that's just it looks like almost like a sun, doesn't it? Reflecting there.
Yeah, the whole thing just looks so vibrant, and it's like it's fake. I can't tell if it's like really looking out to something or it's like a beautiful.
It does overlook the outside, but I can't tell if it's just a reflection or what it is. I have no idea. I'll have to investigate that, Heather. And this to me was, this was more than magical because again, I never had a book launch in America. I never had anything. And everywhere I went, my name was plastered on ancient walls. And it was like, wow, I'm a little bit of a celebrity. And it was so much fun to do that and to feel so welcome. I've not had a single poster put up about me in my own hometown until recently. Of course, again, COVID prevented so much of that. But this was really so unexpected. And talk about joy. I just was filled with it.
Yeah. Well, that's so amazing. You got to do that. That's such a great poster too.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is my team. These are the fierce women, editors, city officials, and of course Laura is on the left, and then Sally, I'm in the middle there, Stefania with the city, and then Giovanna. They were at my side all the time, making sure everything was set up, everything went right. Just so wonderful. And I'm showing my bracelet, which you can't see, but they had just given me the bracelet they'd made for me. Now, these are the two really super mosaic artists. I mean, they're top of the line. They're like the Monets in the art world. They're just fantastic. And Antonio and Chiara. And they are just wonderful people. And they had made the starfish bracelet for me and had given it to me just before I was going to do my presentation. And here's Frederica. And the picture before, Antonio is from Otranto. And I had asked them if they knew any of the people in the book after they read the book. And they didn't really say yes or no. They just said, kind of. And because Antonio did know Frederica and he wanted it to be a surprise for me. And she showed up that night and we were both like, oh my God, this is nuts. This is nuts.
Oh, that's such a great surprise.
Yes, it was so glorious. It was after all those years to see her, and oh my gosh, we saw each other much more after that. Her daughter's an attorney. she's got grandchildren. She's divorced her husband. I mean, so much has happened in our lives. So that was such a gift too. And this is the vice mayor who introduces
Oh.
me. This is Christina Benedetto. And she was delightful. And she said such lovely things about me. I think that when they talk, I don't understand anything they say because they talk much faster than my feeble mind can translate. But Sally said, she said wonderful things about you. So she was really pretty, funny, and vibrant, and a great speaker too. And there I am. This is my book launch. The water and the marina is behind me, so it's beautiful. It's a beautiful spot. But I have to say, there were tons of tourists still there, and we were outside. And you know how tourists are. I'm one myself, so we always stop, and we make a lot of noise while we're stopping, and we talk on our phones, or we call our children loudly. So it was interesting to be in that environment, something I hadn't experienced before. But the people that were actually there were very attentive and very beautiful, and they asked many questions after it was over with. And my Italian was so bad, but they were delighted that I tried to speak it. So it was a wonderful experience. That's all I could say. It was the first time that I stood up to speak publicly, which I told you. There's nothing I hate worse other than snakes. And I didn't feel fear. I felt their hearts just open for me. And when their hearts opened for me, mine opened. And I keep a closed heart. I think I must have most of my life. And my heart opened so wide there, I thought I'd never get it back in. And it was wonderful.
That is so sweet. I'm so glad you had that energy in the room for you.
Yes, I am too. And this is after they gave me flowers. These are the two school teachers that coordinated the students translating the chapter about the last train to Otranto. And they're from Malie. And if you reread the chapter, you certainly wouldn't remember, unless you've got a really good memory, that Malie, the town of Malie, plays an important role, because that's where we were supposed to get the train back to go to Otranto. And that's where we didn't go. And she felt that chapter, if her students could translate that chapter, that would really benefit them. And the reason she had asked that a class of students do this, because that is more difficult to manage, to have particularly teenagers translating a book like this. She said when they were able to come back to school after 2+ years of being away, she said so many of her children, her students, were depressed, and she was very fearful for them. And the standard curriculum wasn't working. And so she went to the headmaster, and he initially refused her to do this because it would take them away from the structure. But she finally convinced him, and she said, if after a week it doesn't seem to help, then we'll stop. But the kids loved doing it. They were so excited, and they were so excited that perhaps they would get to meet a real author, and they'd get to be part of this whole process. And so for me, when I went to that school and gave my presentation, I thought I was going to cry all the way through it. It was so amazing. And I had each student's name, and I asked each one to stand up so that we could applaud them and acknowledge them. And it was such again, joy is the only thing that happens, when you do something like that. So these are the two ladies that made that translation of that chapter possible.
Wow. Oh, that story gets me in the feels. That is so sweet.
And then we all had dinner after. Right by a table, which is behind us, was right on the water. It would be perfect night.
Beautiful.
This is when I went to the school, and this is the poster they put together.
You really did have posters everywhere. That's so
everywhere.
exciting.
And this is the head, next to me is the director of the agricultural school, and next to him is the headmaster. And then the 3 students and Sally. And what's important about the Italian school system is it's very structured, far more than what we have here. And you, as a child, as a 14 or 15-year-old, have to declare in high school what path you're going to take. And so the classical path, which were the students in this class, is music, art, literature, anything that we would consider fine arts, kind of a liberal fine arts kind of education. They have the technical pathway, so that you would go that. They have a scientist, and then they have agriculture. This young, and I call him young because he's younger than I am. He's probably in his 40s, but he's the director of the agricultural school. And this is where I got hope, because he came up to me. He was delighted with the book. He sat through the whole presentation, and then he asked me, would I please have time to walk with him on the farm? And I did. And he showed me the program of how they are grafting branches from olive trees that are resistant to the bacteria that's killing them, and that they are planting a whole new olive tree in this part of Italy. It was, again, so heartwarming. And he was so invested in that program and his students. I mean, I had to see the chickens, I had to see the grapes, I had to see the herbs, and he was so, again, his joy just kept transferring itself to me. I was like, I cannot believe this. And again, such an open heart, and inviting me to come in and be part of who they are and what they represent. So again, that whole day was another walking on rainbows day.
Aww. And I'm glad to hear that good news. That is good.
Yes. Now, I think I've got several pictures. Every bookstore we went into. Now, I will tell you, it's hard to get your book in independent bookstores or even in the big bookstores. Everywhere we went in Puglia, they took my book, put it not only in their store, but in the front window, and then wanted a picture with holding the book. So it was, like I said, I was exhausted because we went from store to store, from venue to venue, but they were so happy that I couldn't be exhausted. I had to be really up for every one of these gatherings, because it was so important. And there's another bookstore, and that's right as you come in the door, and they took the books out of our hands, we have the boxes, and put them right there.
It looked beautiful right on that display there for everybody to see.
Yeah, we even had one lady move all the books out of the front windows and put mine in.
Oh,
And
wow.
don't you love this? Now, these stores, these are their independent stores, and they're multi-generations. This is the granddaughter and the grandfather. And he was so proud. And his son and his wife run the store now, but he ran it for years. And he was so thrilled to have me there. And he had to have this picture, and he wanted his granddaughter to be part of that, in that reading environment. So I love that.
That's really sweet. And that's something I love about how, like, Gemma helps me with the book club. A lot of times even though we're reading novels, she gets to partake and think about it and ask questions, and she loves to read. It is so important that it's throughout the generations.
I have to tell you that Pat Conroy's mother read to him from a very early age. I don't know if have you read any of Pat's books?
I don't think I have, unfortunately, yet.
Okay. Put them on your list. But
I will.
He was her like firstborn, so she took him everywhere, to the art museums, everything. But she read him. She didn't read him children's books. She read him Gone with the Wind. She read him. She exposed him so early. And you're doing that with Jenna, and I just think it's fabulous. Now we're in Sicily, And I was really surprised that I was going to have book events in Sicily, but I did. And again, the reason was, as our pictures go on, I hope that I don't know if the next one is well, this is still another place in Sicily, another poster. And this is after I've spoken at a place, more flowers. What happened is, because Sally lives in Sicily and because I finished the manuscript in Sicily, she thought it was really important to include people from Sicily in the translation. And so she did. And on the left, the tall guy is Marco. And Marco is a, what do you call it? Air traffic controller. He's from Milan. He speaks excellent English, and he was one of the translators. The two other, Alterio and Arden, are doctors. They're in their residency program now, and I can't imagine them even having time, but they worked on a chapter together. I was just so impressed. And they are Albanians. And they are allowed, there is a medical institute university that allows an exchange program. And so they move their families. And again, this is something Europeans do that we don't. Everybody moves. So the grandparents, the parents, the brothers, the sisters, they all move. So we're at Sally's villa. We're on her outdoor balcony, which is huge and gorgeous. And they bring the meal. They call Sally and said, we have to meet the author, and we're bringing all the food. And it was all Albanian food, none of which I've ever eaten before or that I know of. It was fabulous. I mean, the whole night. And again, their pleasure. I mean, they're doing this for free. They didn't get paid. And their joy. And when I signed their books, it was like, I'm not the president of the United States. I'm just some lady, obscure person back in the United States. I have no status, nothing. But they were so happy. And they were taking pictures to send to their friends of what I had written in their books.
Oh, see, that's so exciting. You need to give yourself more credit, because a book is such a huge accomplishment. And I know I'm like that. Like, authors are like my celebrities.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, like I said, Pat Conroy, I have a wonderful Pat Conroy story about how I met him. And I still have the book he signed, and I was number 12. And they gave me the number 112. And they gave me a piece of paper with 112 on it, and I still have it in the book. And that was in 1995. And it was, you know, I was so in awe, and so thankful I had that few moments with him. So
yeah, that stuff sticks with you, and it's so meaningful.
Yeah. Now comes the food. I think these are just all glorious. The next slides are all glorious food, because I want to invite you and all the readers into this community of being around the table. And it's really hard to fight when you've got all this delicious food spread in front of you. It's really hard to be disagreeable, to be pouty, to be whiny, to be all the things that we can be. The food is made with such joy. It's served with such joy, such love. And you're welcomed. It's not screaming out the door, is anybody going to come and eat? It's a welcome to the table. It's a pleasure. It's a treasure even to have you at the table.
See, just the way you totally changed the way I think about trash. Just thinking about a meal, like there's so much more to it than just being a meal. I love that.
It is. Another aperitivo, again at the Blue Bar. I wanted to see if they were still as good. They're not as large and they cost more now, but it was still very good. Oh, Baba rum. And do you know what? I was taught by a French pastry chef how to make these, so I can make these. But we absolutely love them. And there's a huge war over whether they were really invented in France or Italy. So we eat them in both places.
Wow. That is quite a history for a food. That's really cool. It
Yeah.
looks really cool too.
It's,
What is your process like to make those?
well, it's a yeast bread, and I'm very good at yeast breads. Not, I'm far better at those than I am at breads that don't rise. And then once you make the yeast bread, you soak it in a rum syrup. And then you, once you've done that, then you hollow it out. And this is what I do. I do pastry cream inside. So
It looks
they're
delicious.
gloriously rich and good.
It looks really good.
Oh, and I meant to look this up again because I forget how to pronounce this, but this is a pastry that's very specific to Otranto. It's a ricotta cheese filling with candied fruits, and it's divine. But and it's like in a pastry crust, which is very different than like the yeast bread or just a thin shell or something. It's a sweet pastry crust. And Kiera often stopped by in the morning because she knew I was working. I was working on my speech. I was working on something. And she'd stop by and say, "It's time for you to take a break." And she'd bring me these. And I thought, oh, I'm going to gain a lot of weight here. They were so good.
It sounds like a really great flavor combination.
I can't wait for Ray to try these. I think he's just going to go, oh my gosh. And he'll have mixed feelings about the Baba rum versus these. What should I get?
Oh.
So we'll have to alternate days. And then you have to mix in the gelato because, it's the best in the world. So,
See, that's love there. Like even when you're on your own and you're not with him, you're thinking, I need
yeah,
to share this with him.
yes. And this is a whole tray of goodies.
That looks really good. It looks so good. It looks fake.
And it's real. And the thing is, it's even better tasting than it looks. That's
Wow.
what's so great. Some of those are filled with pistachio cream, those little one with the pistachios on top. And oh my gosh,
Looks
just
delicious.
wonderful. And of course, the famous cannoli. And Sicily, I have to tell you, Sicily is the only place to get those. Please don't eat them anywhere else, and make sure you're getting ones that use the fried crust that they make in-house, not something that's shipped to them that's artificial, because there's a huge difference. But
That's a good travel food tip. I like that.
these are full of candied fruit, and then they have the pistachios on the ends. And again, the pistachios and almonds are everywhere. You can buy them dirt cheap. We always keep nuts in the apartment we rent because you just go down to the market and you buy big bags of them. They're already shelled. Pistachios are so expensive here. And Ray and I both love them. And so we have big bowls of pistachios and almonds. And this is another a dish that I like that I learned how to fix too. This is a fried squash blossom, and it is divine. And I've had vegetable gardens. I don't now where I live now because we live right in the city and we have a very small courtyard instead of a big yard. But on squash plants, you grow plants that have blooms that actually grow the fruit, the zucchini or the squash. And then you have blooms that just come out that are beautiful blooms. And you pick those, and you can't wash them, so you can't spray your vegetables with any kind of pesticide. And you stuff them. And I stuffed mine with ricotta cheese, with little green onions, with Italian flavors. And you stuff the little blossom, and the flower will close up around you. You do pull that stamen out because it takes up a bunch of room. And then you roll them, you dip them in, roll them in a little flour, dip them in a little eggs, and roll them in breadcrumbs. And then they're just kind of flash fried. And they are divine. They are so good. I hope my description was good because, again, Ray and I eat all sorts of things, so we may not take our word for it. But it's also on candied seaweed, which I had never had before, and which was so scrumptious I wanted to order a whole plate of it.
That's funny. Seaweed, I feel like I've heard a lot about lately. I saw on something, I want to say it's like an Instagram thing that talks about things going on in the news to make more eco-friendly. And I think they're looking at ways to use seaweed as like packaging for food somewhere instead. So you're not throwing away packaging and you could actually eat the seaweed around it. So it's
Oh.
funny, the seaweed came up after I just saw that recently.
Well, they use a lot of seaweed, particularly in Sicily, more so than other parts of Italy that I've been in. Um, and and I've never really been a fan. I eat Oriental food, but it's not as high on my list as Italian food or French food or something like that. So, but this was superb because I'm a have a major sweet problem, and this was candied, so it was so good. And that's so unique, isn't it? Who would think of candy and seaweed?
Yeah, I've never actually tried seaweed before ever. So the candied seaweed just sounds really cool, actually.
Yeah.
Like I think I'd want to start with that if I ever
Yeah,
tried.
I would recommend that because the other, I always have a problem with it. Sometimes when you get what do you call the Oriental little things? Sushi. Sometimes,
Yeah.
it's in the seaweed wrappers. Uh, and it's okay. And I know there are people that love it, so please forgive me, those people. But this is divine food here. Oh, and again, I asked the little market right across from our apartment if they would fix us a charcuterie board. And look at that. It's gorgeous and it costs next to nothing. That's the other thing.
Wow.
We always get an apartment when we travel because we have found if we live in a place, we can afford to travel. If we eat out all the time, we can't afford to travel. But we cook. We always have a kitchen in our apartment. We cook. We find the local people who do things like this. And we had friends visit us from the States while we were there. And I just went over and said to Marta and I have become wonderful friends. She gave me a beautiful piece of her artwork when we were ready to leave. And I said, could you make a charcuterie board for me? I had, and she said, I'd be happy to. And she told me when I went to pick it up. Now they give you the board and everything, just say, bring it back.
Oh,
So
wow.
they're just so lovely. And I said to her, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And she said, oh, I made it as if I were making it for my family. And I
Aw.
just thought, wow, what a
Yeah.
what a beautiful thing to say. And they put little jams and honey and that's a balsamic drizzle on there and pistachios and
Yeah, it looks like there's so many details and different things.
yes, yes, it's beautiful. Food is art.
It is.
Yeah, and this of course, then this is the squid ink pasta, ravioli with squid ink. That's why it's so black, and it's filled with shrimp. And then on top is a cream-based sauce with a raw tuna on it. It was absolutely delicious. Again, not to everyone's taste. And there's my Ray, my sweet boy.
Oh,
And we're as always toasting. We never share a meal that we don't toast each other. And they are the two books
right next to each other. They
on
look
my
great.
front porch with the
Oh,
Christmas poinsettia.